Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Division of Housing's HQS Inspector Training. We are recording this, just so everybody knows. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A button down at the bottom of your screen. And we've got a lot of information to cover. We are going to take the last 20 minutes of the day and answer any questions that we can't answer during the Q&A. As you answer them, if we can't answer them by text, we'll go ahead and answer them at the last 20 minutes. Now, there's going to be a lot of people on this, so if there's any questions we don't get to by 4 o'clock, we will save them. We'll have a larger area of time on the last day to answer anything that hasn't been answered. And with that, let's get going. Some people have told me that they won't be able to make all of the classes. It is being recorded. So once the recordings are released, there will be a special word in each day's presentation. And if you email me that word, then we'll go ahead with your certificate. And that's about it. Let's get started. We have a lot to cover over the next 3 days. We're going to start with an overview. So there's some helpful resources for everybody. This presentation is geared more towards somebody who has never done an inspection before, is just starting to do inspections, but it's also good as a refresher for everybody else. So helpful resources, the administrative plan, and it's chapter 8 and 15 of the DOH administrative plan, or the Housing Choice Voucher Guidebook, chapters 10 and 17. And then 24 CFR of HUD Part 35 and 40 CFR of the Department of, or 24 or 40 CFR is Protection of Environment Part 745, and other resources are going to be mentioned throughout the training. What's the goal of HQS? It's to ensure decent, safe, and sanitary housing for the tenants that we serve.
Hey, Mickey, I'm really sorry to interrupt. You are not sharing your screen right now.
You are kidding. No. I am so sorry. I will fix that.
That's okay.
That is a bummer. Let's try that again. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. Is it still good?
There we go. Yep.
Okay. All right. So housing quality standards protects the tenants. The standards also ensure adequate supply of rental housing is available, and following the standards ensures that federal dollars are not spent on inadequate housing. Failure to comply may result in monetary sanctions. A lease and HAP contract may not be signed before a unit has passed their HQS inspection. This is just one of the ways that we are ensuring that all of our HCV tenants have homes that are decent, safe, and sanitary. So who needs to learn this information? Anyone who conducts inspections for the Division of Housing vouchers is required to be certified. So anyone who conducts the inspections for our vouchers is required to be certified. So if you have contract inspectors that are coming in, they need to come and be certified. They need to go online and be certified through us before they can inspect any DOH voucher. Also, anybody who conducts a home visit or has contact with voucher clients really should consider taking this exam. Through HQS, we're creating an environment to make us better able to protect the people we serve. Our objective is, as I said before, ensuring that everyone has decent, safe, and sanitary housing. So the certification, like I mentioned, anyone who conducts inspections for our vouchers has to be certified through our program. And at the end, we'll go through more information on how to become certified. We're going to go into the basics, and most of it is going to be things you would see in a unit. We're going to start at the very bottom. So, overview of a housing inspection. Again, decent, safe, and sanitary housing. First thing you want to look for is, are there any hazards? Unit must be free of any hazards. No damaged, broken, or improperly hooked up appliances. There must be no evidence of gas or water leaks. Gas leaks, if you smell rotten eggs in the place, you've got a gas leak. You can also hear hissing sometimes. We'll get into that. If it's part of the unit, it has to work properly. Fixtures, appliances, outlets, switches, windows, everything has to work as it's designed. It can fail for non-standard items. So just because it's not part of an HQS, the guidelines, doesn't mean it can't fail for that. If it's in the unit and provided by the landlord, it has to work properly. And also the appliances, if they are tenant supplied, those have to work properly. So like air conditioners, they're not required. Screens are not required. But if they're there, they need to work properly. The screens need to be in safe condition where they're not going to cut anybody. We'll start with electricity. If the power's not on when you get there, then the inspection is a fail and has to be rescheduled. It has to be on. You can't test the outlets, you can't test the light switches or the appliances or anything without power. If the family pays for the utilities, then the utilities must be separately metered for that family's unit. If the owner is unable to separate the meters, then he or she must pay the utilities. The exception is owners who bill the tenants for utilities using a square footage or other formula. Accessibility to the location of outlets, it's tenant preference. I mean, if they've got an electrical outlet clear up by the ceiling, it's not a fail because it's up by the ceiling. So all outlets and switches must work properly and be permanently installed. So outlets. If you see this picture, this is a fail. Even though it's properly marked and everything, it doesn't have a screw, so it's not being held onto the outlet. There are three main kinds of outlets in the home that you'll be looking at. You've got the grounded, ungrounded, and then the GFCIs. If you note, the grounded has that, the grounded and the GFCIs has that third hole for the grounding pin. A ground fault circuit interrupter, GFCI, it monitors the amount of current flowing from hot to neutral. And if there is any difference in that, in the hot to neutral, what the electricity going in and the electricity going out, it'll trip that circuit. In newer units, it's used by the sink and in wet spaces. Having an outlet, it makes having an outlet by the water safer. GFCIs became code in 1971, and they are not required in older homes. I get that question a lot. If there's not a GFCI in the bathroom, it's not a fail. But if they are there, they need to work properly. Ungrounded outlets. GFCIs can be used in place of an ungrounded outlet. If it's in place of an ungrounded outlet, it will not pop when the button is tested, when the GFCI is tested. It doesn't have to be grounded, but if it's not grounded, then it must have the proper receptacle. It must have either the two-pronged outlet or a GFCI, or an electrician can replace the first outlet in a string and it will protect the rest of the outlets on that line, but those need to be noted with the stickers. A GFCI will not trip with the tester if it's ungrounded, but it will detect an imbalance between hot and neutral conductors in a true ground fault issue, and it will trip the GFCI. So when you test it, it's going to say that it's ungrounded and you aren't able to test it. The button won't pop, but because it is an ungrounded outlet. But if something actually happens, it will pop. The same can be achieved with the GFCI breakers. These are in new builds a lot. They are the breakers that have those little test buttons on them. You'll also find outlets. Anyway, there's a lot of of these in the new builds, in the brand new builds. When you do this, when you see these, one of the things you need to know is that you can pop them. You'll go to the outlet in the kitchen or bathroom, and you can test, and it will pop the breaker, and you'll have to go to the breaker box to turn it back on. With this kind of outlet, you have to finish pushing it the rest of the way to off before you turn it back on. Otherwise, it won't reset. And that's what. So outlets. When your outlet says that you've got a hot and neutral that is reversed, the hot and neutral reversed, what they're saying is that the hot wire has been screwed onto the silver screws instead of the gold screws, and that the neutral wire, which is usually the white wire, is screwed onto, they're backwards. There's many different brands and types of testers. If you're shopping for one, look for one that has that GFCI test button on the tester. It'll save your nails a lot. The tester can give you a false reading if it's not fully pushed into the outlet. And some even have current testers on the same unit on the other side, so that you can check ungrounded outlets that have power, saving there. You can also put an adapter on the end of your tester. A tester can wear out. If the ground pin gets loose, the tester will give you a false ungrounded reading. Always push and pull the tester in and out straight, protecting that little pin, the round pin on the tester. Switches. Pull chain switches. These wear out easily. Sometimes they get pulled out. They have to be replaced. Even if the fixture's on a switch, check the pull chain and make sure it works as well. Often lights and ceiling fans are on the same switch, and the chain can be used to turn one or the other off. A standard switch has a single action. It either connects power to something or disconnects power to something, usually a light or an outlet. 3 or 4-way switches is when 2 or 3 switches operate the same item. So if you've got, a light switch at the bottom of the stairs and at the top of the stairs, and they both operate the light over the stairs, that would be a 3-way switch. Both switches have to work properly. And if you get one, sometimes I get 3-way switches where one switch only works if the other one is in a certain position. Then one of those 3-way switches has failed and it needs to be fixed. Dimmer switches have a little slide on them. There might be a knob that turns. They're used to lower the lighting in the room. Now, sometimes you're going to see that the dimmer switches don't seem to work. LED lights only dim on an LED dimmer. So it might be the wrong type of bulb with the wrong type of a dimmer switch. If an outlet is showing no power, look for a switch. The outlet may turn on and off from that switch. In a lot of units, you'll find that it is the outlet that looks like it's upside down. And that's the one that's on the light switch. It makes it easier to find. If it's not something that's on a switch and you still don't have power, look and see if there's a GFCI somewhere that's tripped that might be causing that fail before you fail it. Like garbage disposals. In a lot of units, the landlords will take out the garbage disposals, but there should still be, if there's a switch for it, there needs to be an outlet underneath that you can test. If not, then that switch needs to be removed, because every switch needs to go to something. Different types of wiring. There's conduit. Metal sheath electric wiring is conduit. It's there's two examples here. It's either a metal pipe or a corrugated metal pipe that runs the wires through it. And you can mount that on ceilings and walls. It doesn't matter if it's on the outside of the wall, behind the wall. That is perfectly passable. Wall mount is sometimes referred to as decorative wall conduit or surface mount. It's those plastic strips you can see going to and from outlets and switches. That's usually done when you are rewiring a home, upgrading a home, and they're putting the outlets outside the wall. That is perfectly acceptable. Those are fine, so long as there are no exposed wires. And then NMS is Romex. Romex is the brand. And this is just the wiring that's sheathed inside of a sheet of like plastic. That has to be behind walls. It's okay if it's in a storage or utility room, but it can't be in the living spaces. Breaker boxes. This is where the power comes into the house or the unit, and service is distributed throughout the house, inside and out. There are spaces in breaker boxes. Those are knockouts. There needs to be either a breaker or a knockout in place. No wires can be exposed. Some wiring is old enough to have a fuse box. These also need to have their wires protected by a panel. If you look at the one that's crossed out, if you look at that green fuse, you can see somebody's put a penny behind it and then screwed it in. That is a huge fire hazard. So look through the little glass window. If you run across these, look through that little glass window and make sure. It's an old trick that a lot of people used if they kept popping the breakers, to just go ahead and bypass the screw and fuse. Cartridge fuses. These are usually, you're going to find them more on houses with wells. These need to have doors too, and no wires again can be exposed. So permanently installed light fixtures. They've got to be securely fastened to the ceiling or the wall, not movable, designed to be hardwired. No matter how well it's mounted, if it plugs into an outlet, it is not a permanently installed light fixture. A single outlet can have more than one receptacle, but it's still one outlet. Extension cords plugged into another plug. Special purpose outlets. Those outlets dedicated to air conditioners or appliances are not included in the outlet count for HQS. So the plug the refrigerator is plugged into does not count for the kitchen's outlet. Table and floor lights, when permanently installed fixtures are required. do not count towards that permanently installed fixture. Ceiling swag lamps plugged into a socket also do not count as a permanently installed fixture. I've actually had an inspection where they put a swag lamp plugged into the outlet in the bathroom. So, I mean, you need to be aware of those things. All lights and fixtures need to be working. You need to check everyone on a move-in, and as many as possible on your annual or biennial inspections. Even if there's more than is required, every single one needs to be tested when you do a move-in. All of them need to work properly. Blank plates, dead plating. If it's a non-working switch or outlet, in order to remove the potential hazard, that is allowed. So if they don't have a garbage disposal anymore, they can blank out the outlet under the sink, and they can blank out where the switch used to be. If the light doesn't work, check and make sure it's the bulb before failing the fixture. Any exposed wires that are not connected to anything are a hazard. All of these are going to be considered hazards. Missing, cracked, or broken switch or outlet plates, exposed fuse box connectors, wire connections, missing knockouts, overloaded circuit, overfused circuits. These are all electrocution and fire hazards. Loose or improper wire connections, non-working outlet, improper connections, improper installation, poor grounding. I mean, if you are in a unit that 90% of the outlets in the unit are coming up grounded, and you go to one outlet, one three-pronged outlet, and it is not showing grounded, then it probably just did not get attached and it needs to be fixed. Either way, it needs to be fixed if it's a three-pronged outlet and it's showing not grounded, unless it's got that sticker saying it's GFCI protected. Look for broken fraying or wear on the insulation of the wires. Improper splices. Electrical tape is not enough. Light fixtures hanging from an electrical wire cord or other form to support it. A lot of these pictures are from inspections I've done. Electrical cords that run under rugs and other floor coverings for appliances. You don't want electrical cords running underneath the electrical appliance, any of the appliances, or under any rugs. That is that's a wear issue. You're going to have wearing, you're going to have sparking, and it's a fire hazard. Rubber cloth or plastic coated wire, the Romex, like I told you about, on the outside of the wall. Lamp cord, the cord that you see on lamps used as part of this electrical system. Anything laying near or in water where water might splash. Open boxes. If there is a connection box, it needs to have a cover on it. Anything, outlets that are not connected, screwed into the wall properly. If you go to test it and the whole thing jiggles, it needs to be tightened up. This top right one is a ground pin stuck in an outlet. It broke off of somebody's plug when they pulled it out. So I wanted to show you guys this. This is a place I used to work at. And after I left, I got a call in the middle of the night that the dining hall was on fire. And after the investigation, it turns out that somebody had run an electrical cord under the washer and dryer in the laundry room. And this was the result. More hazards again, overloading a circuit. It's so easy if they've got too many things plugged in. You know, if they've got their power strips plugged into another power strip, that is not acceptable. So plumbing, And we have no questions so far. This is amazing. Okay, so for those people who are watching this on video and aren't able to make all 3 days worth of classes, today's word's going to be sanitary. And if they email me the word sanitary, they'll get their participation certificate as well. Water source and wastewater. The unit must be attached to an approved public or private system. Private wells. If you have a private well, discuss with the owner if the well's been tested for potability. Potability is it safe to drink? Unit must be attached to an approved public sewer or septic system. I'm going to say this a lot. For private septics, discuss with the owner to make sure it meets local code standards and to make sure it meets with the health codes. Was it permitted or has it been inspected? Ask the age of the system and when it was last emptied. Usually septic tanks are emptied about once every 5 years, depending on the size of it. Now, drains, in a unit, all drains need to drain to the approved system, like the sinks, tubs, washing machines, etc., cannot drain to the garden. And if you're doing rural homes that are on a septic system, you may actually find that. It's a country thing. I used to do it too. The soapy water from the washing machine into the flower garden is just, as far as the owner is concerned, probably saving on water bill, you know, on the electricity bill from pulling water out of the well. Signs of a sewage leak. If you see standing water or sink areas in a direct line from the home, there's a good possibility that there is a water or sewage leak there. If it smells foul, I can guarantee it's probably a sewage leak. Plumbing and fixtures. All showers, tubs, sinks, faucets, sprayers, all of them must have hot and cold running water and adequate pressure. I've actually had a home where there was nothing but hot water in the bathroom sink and nothing but cold water in the shower. Sinks, faucets, and sprayers, they, again, all need to be properly attached. They need to be properly attached to the floors and walls and countertops. They must have a P-trap. A P-trap or a gas trap, it is that elbow bend underneath the sink. It's not an elbow, it's an actual U, and that holds water. There's trapped water in the bottom of that U, and it prevents the escaping gases from the sewer or septic from coming back into the house. Always check under the sink while the water's running to look for leaky pipes. And again, drain pipes must feed to an approved septic or sewer. All fixtures must be securely attached. They should not move from where they're mounted, and they must work properly. Faucets and sprayers must be in proper working condition, no broken parts, no consistent drips. And the sprayers must work and be connected properly. The base should not be loose, missing, or disconnected. Sprayers are not required. If there is a hole where the sprayer would go and it's not covered up, that would be a fail item to avoid possible cutting. And also to prevent water from going down into the base cabinet and creating water damage and mold. Showers and tubs. Again, they need hot and cold running water. The valve spouts and shower heads need to work properly and be free of consistent leaks. Make sure that the shower's got adequate water pressure. Sometimes if they've had that shower head on for several years, or if the water's been turned off at any time, and turned back on, then the aerator on that shower head, the filters in there can get, and all the little holes can get clogged with sediment that came up through the pipe when the water was turned back on. And just over age, you can have buildup. Make sure the diverters are working properly. When you pull up or down or turn the diverter to shower, then water should not be coming out of the spout. It's supposed to divert all the water. Surrounds and floorings, check for broken, loose tiles, missing grout, caulking. Check the floor for soft spots, especially around the toilet and the shower. Drain pipes, again, must feed to the proper septic and sewer. Toilets, they need to be mounted securely. And you can nudge them and check. I mean, do nudge them and check to make sure that they're not tippy, as I've been told is a good phrase for it. They need to fill and drain properly. The bowl must completely empty. The tank must fill. There should be no toilet run on. All toilets, again, need to be attached to an approved system. Things to check for. This was actually the one on the right. It was actually an inspection last week that I did. The toilet was tippy. It was not mounted properly, and the wax seal had failed. And when you flush the toilet, water came out the bottom onto the floor. So you want to make sure it's secure to the floor. Is the tank lid missing, cracked, or broken? Is the seat loose or broken? Those are fail items. I mean, if you sit on a broken toilet seat or a cracked toilet seat, it's going to pinch you. So you want to get that changed. Composting toilets. This is a question we've had in the past, and at this time, they are not acceptable. Mold-like substance. So it might look like mold. You might be positive that it's mold, but you're not a lab. So you cannot definitively state that it's mold. On your report, it should be marked as a mold-like substance. All mold-like substances need to be addressed. Some more pictures of mold and what mold looks like. Mold spores are actually in the air everywhere. They just need the right conditions in order to start growing. And that condition is water. I mean, it needs moisture. So if you've got poor ventilation to an area, if you've got poorly vented water heater areas, like if there's not enough airflow going to the water heater, and you're going to get moisture, you're going to get humidity, and you're going to get mold. If there's been water damage or flooding, look in the basement and look for those things. Bathroom, ceilings and walls, floors and flooring, everything needs to be checked. So wet areas, bathroom, kitchens, laundries, and utility areas. Like we talked about, soft spots and mold are especially like that bathroom I showed you earlier where the water was coming out from under the toilet. This one, evidently, it went on for quite a while and it ruined the floor. These, and like I said, these are prime areas for mold-like substance to flourish. So what does water damage look like? You've got a leaking roof or you've got water coming into the home somehow. If you see bubbles like this, don't push them because the grossest water in the world will come out. So don't push it. It's water-like damage or it's water damage. Write it up and let the landlord take care of it. More water damage, you'll see staining up the walls. A lot of this peeling, or where you see it coming from the ceiling and following the window well there, that's all water damage. Under sink, stains, lifting of flooring, especially hardwood floors. If they get wet, they will really warp. Ceilings and walls, loose or damaged structural member, severe buckling and bulging. This is not one of my pictures, but I couldn't pass putting it up. That floor above it definitely failed. Loose sections of plaster, falling surface material, areas where plaster or drywall is sagging, severely cracked or otherwise damaged, it needs to be repaired or replaced. Surfaces that are wet or damp spots with or without mold-like substance, you've got wet spots under the cupboard. There's obviously a leak in front of the dishwasher. Large holes, if the hole is larger than an 8 by 11 piece of paper. Any hole, regardless of size, that allows bugs or vermin or significant drafts to enter. So if there's a hole in the wall and it's an exterior wall, it's a fail. If it's bigger than a nail hole, it's a fail. If it's on an interior wall, then it can be up to the size of a piece of paper. Ask yourself, is this an exterior wall? Can you see daylight? Is there a draft? Will it let bugs or vermin in? Is it insulated? Is insulation exposed? Is it bigger than a piece of paper? Are wires or pipes exposed? Do you see or smell any mold-like substance? Is it a health or safety issue? If you answer yes to any of these, it's a fail. Small holes on the outside, these are passed with comment items. Small holes on the outside, on the inside walls, smaller than a piece of paper, minor crumbling of plaster, some missing or broken ceiling tiles, water stains, dirty stained surfaces, and unpainted surfaces are just a pass with comment. Okay. Tenants can determine if minor things such as lack of paint or wallpaper conditions will affect the livability of the unit. Okay, inspecting walls. Examine and evaluate all walls in the room. Include and record the worst condition in the rating, and if one wall fails, the room fails. Floors and flooring. Loose or warped boards that are a tripping hazard must be fixed and made level. If they can't be leveled, then they need to be replaced. Same with tripping hazards on carpet. Severe buckling or major movement when you walk. So if you walk on a deck and one of the boards shifts under your foot, that's an issue. Any hole in the traffic area of a room, any hole 4 inches or larger in the floor, and less than 4 inches if it's in a traffic area. But if it's in a non-traffic area and there is a hole 4 inches or larger, it's a fail. Damaged or missing floorboards, cracked or broken tiles that present a cutting hazard, cracks or holes penetrating both the finished floor and the subfloor, creating a cutting hazard, or a draft if it's like to the crawl space. If you've got a draft coming up through the spaces between the boards. Permanent flooring, any permanent flooring cover that presents a tripping hazard. Okay. Floors and flooring fail items. Again, here's another piano that fell through the floor. I just wanted to give you some pictures. That is a cabin I used to take care of. The previous person that took care of it decided to go through and put wood putty between all of the boards to make it smooth. And that wood putty since this was built just 6 inches off the dirt, it created a lot of moisture on the bottom side, and it made all of the boards warp up, and it just was one giant wave of warped boards. So things that will pass with comment: non-hazardous defects, significant scuffing, marring, scratches, soiled, stain, dirty floor finish or covering. And by dirty floor finish, I don't mean they didn't mop. I mean that it's old enough that it's getting worn down and can't be cleaned. Minor damage to linoleum or parquet floor, tripping hazards that are not part of the permanent floor covering, such as the tenants throw rugs if they are hazardous, holes that are smaller than 4 inches that are not in traffic areas, and the tenant can decide if that minor defect is a fail. I mean, if it's not a fail, but something they can't live with. But those are the things you would notice on, or you would mark as a pass with comment. Windows and doors. So windows that are designed to open must open smoothly. They need to stay open without propping, and they need to shut smoothly. A window that does not stay open on its own is a safety hazard. If it's designed to be open, it needs to be It needs to be able to work. It needs to be able to open. No window can be screwed shut. If a window is within 6 feet of the ground or a common walking area where that window must be able to lock. Working windows, again, within 6 feet of the ground or that lead to the unit from a fire escape, porch, walkway, other outside area that can be reached from the ground. So if there is a balcony there, it needs to be able to lock. Balcony doors need to be able to lock too. Acceptable types of locks. It doesn't have to be the lock that was on there originally. You can get sash locks. They can have sash locks, or they can have this metal clamp with the screw. A lot of units will do that, especially if they've got the aluminum windows. They just set that over a track and then screw it down tight, and it locks it in place. It's wonderful if you want to open the windows a little bit for the summer while you're sleeping. It keeps it from being opened any further. The conditions of the frames and sashes. The window sashes need to be in good condition, solid and intact, properly fitted to the window pane frame, and severely damaged or deteriorated sashes need to be replaced. Windows must be weather stripped as needed to ensure weather-tight seal. If it's winter and you go in and there is ice on the inside of the window, that's a fail, or water. No broken or missing panes, no loose or cracked panes. Cracked and breaks and tapes. This is a temporary fix only. This is not a permanent fix. The window does need to be replaced. But if it's just a crack or a small break, they can put tape over it to protect the tenant until the window can be fixed. Skylights, you treat them just like windows. Screens aren't required, but if they are, they need to be in good condition. Can someone get cut on this? Standard to the screens, to tears and screens. Burglar bars are allowed, but only if they're an emergency exit. Windows or windows in a bedroom, if they are on an emergency exit window or in a bedroom and the window opens, they must have a working quick release. So if there's bars on the windows, the bedroom window bars have to have a quick release. Make sure you test the quick release, and the owner is responsible for ensuring the family is instructed in how to use it. At least 50% of the windows in a unit need to be designed to open. This is for ventilation purposes. Severe deterioration. Items on a window that fail are severe deterioration, missing, cracked, loose, or broken panes, accessible windows that cannot be locked, windows without a tight seal that allow drafts into the unit, windows that don't stay open or closed position on their own, and windows that don't open and they're designed to open. So, pro tip, inspectors, take a lot of care when opening and closing blinds and curtains. When you open blinds, if they are the horizontal blinds, you want to make sure that they are all flat, not in any one of the shade positions, but flat when you pull them up, and pull them up gently, because they might come down on top of you, or it might pop out and break. And if they're in the open position, vertical or horizontal blinds, if they're in the fully open position, when you move them, they will move easier. And some are designed so they won't move at all unless they're in that position. On to doors. All doors that provide egress from the unit must be able to lock. All knobs and locks need to be easy to use. You need to be able to open and close them smoothly. And they need to be able to secure the door. And they need to be secure to the door. They need to have a striker plate. On doorknobs, you need to have a striker plate where the doorknob is. That will reinforce that closing. Deadbolts need to have thumb turns on the inside. They can't be keyed on both sides. And you see this on a lot of security doors. A lot of security doors have the keyed on both side locks, and those actually need to be changed to a thumb turn lock. The main lock can't be a slip bolt or a chain lock, but these items can be on the door. So it's not a fail item unless that's the only way to lock the door. All exterior doors need to be weather tight to avoid any air or water coming through, and they must be lockable. See, that one is just a little off center. So there's a huge draft that came in through that door. Exterior doors should have no holes, and the frames and trim need to be intact and have a threshold. They need to be free of damage that might prevent the door from being locked securely or allowing drafts in. Look for holes, cracks, splits, or deteriorating wood. Poor weather stripping, sweep. And can you see daylight? When you close the door, can you see daylight around the edges? Then it doesn't have enough weather seal on it. That is actually my son's door after a break-in. Some more pictures of units that I've seen with break-ins. This is definitely a fail. The doors on the interior of the unit, the closet, bedroom doors, bathroom doors, all of these doors and their component parts must be free of damage that would impair their use and ability to be opened and closed properly. The bathroom doors do not have to have a lock on them. So appliances. I think somebody in here will recognize these pictures. These are red tags. Sometimes they're yellow. And this means that, that the gas company or another entity has condemned the appliance or utility until repairs are made. That appliance You cannot turn that on. It should be off, and it is a fail. There's usually clear instructions on the tag explaining that it can't be used and it must be repaired or replaced. If an item's been tagged, like I said, it's an automatic fail until proof that it has been satisfied. So that's actually one of the units I went to. It was the most amazing one I ever inspected. Appliances may be supplied by a tenant or landlord. If the required appliances are owner supplied and they are not present, the unit fails. If at move-in inspection, if the required appliances are tenant supplies and they're not there, then it's inconclusive, which is a fail. And that, in order to pass it, they need to have their appliances in place. If at annual or biennial inspection, the required appliances and tenant supplied are not present, it is a fail. If the tenant supplied ones aren't there, it's a tenant fail. If the owner supplied ones aren't there, it's an owner fail. They must have a stove, oven range, or a microwave, and a refrigerator. Cooking. Both the stovetop and the ovens must be present and working with proper knobs and burners and pans. Every burner needs to be checked. No burners or knobs can be missing. Both the bake and broil functions need to be checked. All electrical burners and drip pans are not the same. So there are two main brands, and if they get the wrong burner with the wrong drip pan, then that burner is going to sit unevenly, and you've got a chance for boiling pots or whatever to tip over, and it's just not, it's not safe. So that is a fail. If the burner rings are chipped, they can pass with comment if they work, but that is another thing where it might create a hazard supporting the pans. If the burner ring is cracked, be really careful when you turn it on, because that can shoot sparks and scare you like crazy, and would be a definite fail. Gas or LP, which is propane, ovens must be properly connected to the gas line. All burners and ovens must light properly. If you are at a home that uses propane and you can't get the stove to stay lit or the gas to stay lit, it might possibly be the orifice where the gas comes into the unit, into that particular appliance. Because in the city, when you're on a gas line, the holes are smaller for the gas to come through to the appliance than if you're on propane, because the gas in the city is under pressure and propane is not. So it may just be, but that is for the landlord to figure out. If the tenant agrees, microwaves are furnished instead of an oven or a range, and but it has to be in both, all of his units. So everybody in the building needs to have a microwave instead of a stove. A tenant can supply a microwave in lieu of the tenant supplied stove. When testing the microwave, always have the tenant put a cup of water or something in to start the test. Never run an empty microwave. Marks on the roof of a microwave, that's a sign that the microwave oven's been arcing. Hot plates are not acceptable. They can be in the unit, but they do not satisfy the requirement. Hood systems, exhaust systems are not required, but if they're present, they need to work as designed. So the light needs to work, and there needs to be a filter over the fan That filter over the fan needs to be there. It not only catches any grease or debris coming up and protects the fan, but it also protects everybody from the exposed wires and the fan blades. Refrigerators. So life begins at 40 degrees. That's always been in a restaurant setting. That is a saying, because bacteria is more likely to start growing at 40 degrees. So the refrigerators need to be under 40. Refrigerators are required. They must maintain a temperature low enough to prevent the food from spoiling, and the freezer needs to be able to store frozen foods. So safe storage temperatures. If you're actually using a thermometer, I like to use a thermometer, because especially when I'm doing the biennials, well, I like to do it at all times. You actually know whether or not the refrigerator is at temperature, and the freezer is at temperature, and that it's actually going to be safe for the person. And it's a good learning thing for a tenant. Sometimes if I find that they've got their refrigerator up too high, I can explain to them that it needs to be under 40 so that the food will last longer for them. 40 to 33 is where a refrigerator should be, and below 32 for a freezer. Refrigerators need to be an adequate size for the family, and have an adequate amount of shelving for food storage. So it can't be a dorm refrigerator. It just can't be a dorm refrigerator. Always check the gasket. Gasket should be in good condition to prevent the cold air from leaking out. And a good indication of a bad freezer gasket is buildup of frost on the walls. It's also an indication of other issues. Shelves and handles should not be broken. There should be an adequate number of shelves. Dishwashers. Dishwashers aren't required, but like we always say, if they're there, they need to work properly. Check the gasket, make sure that it locks properly and that it doesn't leak. If it's a unit that has been empty for more than a month or so, it may not pull water into it, because the water down at the bottom will dry up the pump and the pump won't be primed. So they may need to add, the landlord may need a little water to get to draw the water in. Turn on and check and make sure that it actually puts water out, that it actually runs. And check the bottom of the machine and make sure it doesn't leak out onto the floor. And check the fill and drain lines for leaks under the sink. Garbage disposals. And I know we're going through, and it's a lot of stuff. We're going through very quickly. I wanted to spend more time on questions and answers at the end. And this will be recorded, so if there's anything you miss, you can go back through. Garbage disposals are not required, but if they're supplied, they need to work. A splash guard needs to be installed. That way nothing shoots out of the garbage disposal and smacks you when you test it. If there is no garbage disposal, but there's a switch from the old one, that switch needs to operate. Something. Look underneath the sink and see if the outlet's there. Washers and dryers. Washers and dryers are not required, but if it's part of the unit, again, it needs to work. Other appliances, we've got bathroom exhausts. So bathroom exhaust systems are designed to allow the moist air from the bathroom to be vented to the outside and to help prevent an excess moisture. It also helps prevent mold and mildew from forming. And just another pro tip, ceiling fans are the exhaust systems. They're designed to work for 20 minutes after you leave the room, to work optimally in order to prevent any moisture buildup in the room. They need to have either a window or an exhaust system, period. If there's no window, there must be some kind of an airflow system out of the room. Either an electrical fan. Fans need to have covers that hide the wires and blades, and they should work. If you hear a horrible grinding noise when you turn it on, that's a fail. Gravity flow shaft. And actually, depending on how bad it is, the grinding noise, it could be just a pass with comment. Gravity flow shafts. So you might see something on the ceiling that looks like a heater vent in a bathroom. That would probably, and if there's no exhaust in that room, it's probably a gravity flow vent. One of the ways you can tell is put a piece of tissue up by the vent, or after you've checked for hot and cold water, your hands are wet, put your fingers up by the vent and you should feel the draft. Water heaters. All water heaters require a pressure relief valve, also called a temperature relief valve, and a discharge line. That temperature relief valve is a safety feature so that if the water in the water heater gets overheated, it will relieve the pressure rather than bursting or blowing the water heater. Plumbing code, International Plumbing Code says the discharge line needs to terminate no higher than 6 inches off the ground. This is so, this is a safety feature. If the discharge line is not down towards floor level, then it's going to be discharging right about base height, right underneath that pressure relief valve. And you're not able to get to it to turn off the water going to it. It's, you know, it's a burn hazard. Gas and propane water heaters need to be vented properly, and that vent needs to be centered over that vent hole. Water heaters don't need venting. The vent cannot S. It serves like a P-trap. It's preventing the gases from leaving the room, and then the room, it's going to take the path of least resistance, and it is going to spread that exhaust out into the room. Watch for cracked, broken vent pipes and flues. Access to the panel or pilot, all of that should be in place, the electronics. Location of the water heater must be in a place that does not present a hazard to the tenant. So if it is in a common living space, there needs to be a safety divider. Propane heaters can't be in a bedroom, kitchen, or living space, or in a room used for storage if the dividers are not installed. The area around the water heater needs to be free and clear of combustibles for obvious reason. There should be no gas leaks. And the tenant decides whether or not the water heater is adequate, whether or not they get enough hot water from it, the size of the water heater. All boilers and water heaters over 200,000 BTUs need to be inspected by the state boiler inspector. And I'm going to put in the chat really quick, like, 2 websites for you that you can download, that you can save. Okay. You're going to find boilers, giant water heaters in apartment buildings, usually bigger than 6 units. The certificate needs to be hung up in the boiler room, and a sticker with the boiler, a sticker from the boiler inspector will be on that unit. To learn more about the state boiler inspection program and its requirements, that address is, I just sent to everybody. And If you want to be able to check on a boiler and you're unable to access the boiler room at the time, you can go to the website that is also here, the OPS colorado.gov boiler/database, and you should be able to look up all the inspected boilers. Okay, it froze. Hang on just a second. There we go. So, heating. A system capable, it's defined as a system capable of providing adequate heat directly or indirectly to all rooms used for living. The system must be able to maintain the temperature over a period of time. So the Division of Housing rule is the heating system must be able to keep the interior of the building at least 65 degrees Fahrenheit between October 1st and May 1. So this time of year, if you get a call saying, I've got no heat, it's a fail. The thermostat tells the burner when to turn on and off. The gas is ignited in the burner, and it heats the metal heat exchanger. And the incoming air is heated from the furnace. All right, starting over, sorry. Forced air gas furnaces. The cold air comes in and it is heated and it is pushed out by fan into the rest of the house. Fluid heat, everything comes out of a boiler and it goes to a valve to a specific room, to a radiator, and then the water comes out of the radiator and back to the boiler to be reheated. On boiler heated units, you'll see a lot of these long radiators, and there are fins on those. Those are really easily damaged. Those fins are supposed to be covered and protected, and they can't be all crinkled up. If they're damaged, that needs to be fixed. In-floor heat can be either electric or hot water. And then there's solar and in-ground. Occasionally you'll run into solar, especially if you do rural, solar or an in-ground heat pump. And the solar preheats the water before it goes through the boiler, and then it's distributed out to the radiators. And geothermal, it's the same kind of system. It's just preheating everything in the ground and then bringing it back up to the home to go through the boiler. What to look for. If it's gas or propane, make sure that it's vented properly and that there are no escaping gases. Make sure the pilot and electronics are protected and that none of the exhaust pipes are cracked or separated. Make sure that the grates, vent covers, or fins are covered and are all in place and not. This also was a picture I took, the one on the left-hand bottom, I took last week. All those fins, that whole unit really needs to be replaced. There's no protection on it, so it's a problem. Look for excess buildup, blocking the air intakes. If there's not an adequate supply of clean air going into the system, it's not going to have an adequate supply of warm air coming out. And it could, suffocate the fire. Potential fire hazards, that's a water heater, that are blocking airflow, the presence of combustibles around the furnace or water heater. On liquid involved systems, check for leaks around the radiators, damage to the floors in and around and under the radiators, and like I said before, exposed and damaged vents. Fuel tank storages need to be, if it's propane, it needs to be raised up off the ground. See how it's on cinder blocks? If you're unable to gain access to the primary heating system, then it's inconclusive and you need to check with the manager for verification of the system. If the system has passed a recent local inspection, then check it as passed. And then if there's no heating system in place, I want to hit that one right away. If there's no heating system in place, space heaters may not be used as a permanent fix, which was our next slide. Portable heaters are not adequate. Landlords can use them to provide emergency heat if the heating system is broken. Unvented and open flamed fuel space heaters like kerosene, oil, or etc. are not acceptable at any time. Heat is not required in secondary rooms. For instance, like storage rooms, closets, rooms not used for living, those are not required to have heat. Cooling. In Colorado, air conditioning is not required. But if it's in the unit, it needs to work properly and you need to test it. Check to make sure that there is a seal around the wall units, preventing outside air and vermin from entering the unit. I have seen in several cases where the original air conditioner went out and that big hole they've got cut through the wall in the apartment, they put a smaller air conditioner unit in there and they did not insulate around it. So basically you can see outside around the air conditioner. It needs to be sealed around the air conditioner so that nothing comes in, no air, no bugs, nothing. Look for leaks around swamp coolers. And then exteriors. Let's start with roofs. Look for broken, missing tiles, sagging or buckling. The one on the right was an inspection I did. Can you see how the roof is sagging there? Gutters and fascias and soffits, they're not required, but if they're there, they need to be attached properly and work properly. Look for damaged gutters, serious buckling, sagging. It'll create excessive pooling around the water and the foundation and can cause some indoor flooding. Also look for sagging and broken fascia or soffits. Large holes or defects that allow water or air bugs to enter. That's actually my house, and there was a wasp nest inside under that board. So you got to take care of those things. Walls, siding, and chimney. Exterior surfaces should be in good condition, free of cracks and breaks that would allow elements or vermin to penetrate and compromise the structure. Loose, damaged structural members, things you want to look for on walls, sidings, and chimneys. You want to look for severe buckling, bulging, cracking, or leaning, loose sections of broken siding. Damage where the walls are exposed to outside elements. You see behind this where the breaks are from the hail damage, you can see the insulation and the studs behind it. Broken panels, exposing the structure to damage from the elements and tenants to the asbestos dust. These are asbestos tiles. These are old asbestos tiles. You can't assume that just because it's an old home and it's got square tiles that it is asbestos, because there are some newer replacement tiles that have been made, that are out now. But in this particular case, it is asbestos tile. Large penetrating cracks should be addressed. Check inside to see if the crack goes all the way through the structure. So on that one, there was the same crack in the living room all the way up. On that top right one. Splits and stonework, missing bricks, all need to be addressed. Severe cracks and separating are signs of possible foundation issues that need to be addressed. And I'll show you one coming up. There it is. I inspected this house about 2 weeks ago. And it had some severe issues on one side of the house. Look for chimneys. On chimneys, you want to look for chimneys that are leaning, separated from the structure, have large cracks in the brickwork or stonework. If you look at the one on the right, you can see where it's coming away from the house. And you don't want that coming down on somebody. Untreated surfaces, exposed wood to the elements and deterioration. A clear indication of structural issues would be if you saw evidence of flooding in the basement, damp boxes, musty smells, water stains, things like that are things to look for when you're down in basements. Remember to follow all the guidelines for lead-based paint rules. Outdoor electricity and other wires. Look at that box. The wires coming in, the insulation covering the wires has deteriorated, and that needs to be taken care of. That's just flat a hazard. Look for sagging, low-hanging wires, leaning poles. Look at wires that are going into the home at metered boxes, breakers, and their condition. Stairs, porches, decks, landings, and rails. So check the condition of the equipment and equipment of the stairs. Like you want to make sure that there are no rotting boards, no loose rails, no missing or loose supports or hardware. When you grab that handrail, it should not wiggle. Watch for tripping hazards. Stairs need to have safe tread. Stairs which lead to the unit in common areas need to be checked as well. So we don't just check, the stairs going to that particular apartment, but there might be stairways into the common areas that are there, and those need to be checked also. Stairs, bridges, etc. I just said that. So there's a bridge. Any set of stairs with 4 or more steps needs to have a railing. And that's flat, period, 4 or more steps, it has to have a railing. And not just up 2 of them. It needs to be all of them. Any landing or porch that is 30 inches off the ground needs to have side railings. Stairways, all stairways indoor or out need to have a source of natural or artificial light. You need to be able to see where you're going. So we were down to fences, walkways, and outbuildings. The fences need to be stable and not a hazard to the tenants. They should be free of tripping hazards. Walkways should be free of tripping hazards. If there are outbuildings on the property, they need to be free of hazards and of sound construction. So let's talk about debris and clutter in the yard. Always focus on the HQS standards. Evaluating housekeeping only if decent, safe, and sanitary conditions are effective. Is it a safety concern, and can it be cleaned up in 2 hours is the rule. Not everybody's housekeeping, meets your personal standards, and we need to stay with the rules on these. You can't get them just because they haven't swept or vacuumed. If it can be cleaned up in 2 hours, it's okay. Be aware of your surroundings and look for other hazards. This particular ladder was on the 2nd floor balcony going up to the roof. And when I went back 3 days later, it was still there. And it was directly over a playground. When I first saw it, I figured that the maintenance person had just stepped away for a minute, but it was still there when I came back 3 days later. So I did write him up for that. A tree with a broken or hanging branch, they're called widow makers for obvious reasons. I mean, that tree branch right there is really very thick around. And if it comes down on somebody, it will kill them. A tree with a twisted trunk is weak at the point of the twist. This one is leaning towards the home's propane tank, and I still haven't gotten a cut. And so general health and safety. Unit access and egress. So no tenant will have to enter their unit by going through another unit to gain access. If they're renting a basement, it needs to be a separate unit in the home, and the tenant must have a separate entrance that locks. They must not have to go through the other people's living space in order to get to their unit. And the unit must pass HQS just like any other unit. Emergency exits and secondary exits. So the building must have an alternative means of exit, and it needs to meet the state regulations in case of fires and fire code. So there must be another exit other than the main entrance. The window, fire escape, back door, second staircase out of the apartment building, all of those would apply as the secondary exit. Infestation. Now I want to do a trigger alert here. I do have pictures of bugs and mice. So if you don't like seeing those things, go ahead and close your eyes or turn your head for a little bit and just listen. So determination of this should be made. Determination should be made whether the unit is free from rats or severe infestation by mites, vermin, insects, etc. Note areas where inadequate barriers exist, such as holes in the wall, exterior walls that could lead to the infestation. Bed bugs. Verification that the landlord has had the unit treated for roaches or bed bugs is sufficient to pass the unit. So with mice and roaches, a good place to look is underneath the kitchen sink, honestly. When you open that up, it's dark. Things will scurry if there's something going on down there, and you're liable to see in the cupboards and behind the washer and dryer. That's where you're most likely to see any mouse droppings. So trash and refuse disposal. There needs to be adequate facilities, trash cans with covers, garbage chutes, dumpsters, trash bags. If the unit is a move-in inspection, ask the landlord about trash removal. Look for heavy accumulation, large piles of trash and garbage, discarded furniture, other debris, not temporarily stored, and it's not temporarily stored and awaiting removal, that might harbor rodents and vermin. I went to one apartment and there was couches outside of it, and there were rats crawling around. Piles like that attract things that need a warm place to sleep. This can occur inside and outside the common areas, or even inside the unit. Housekeeping versus hoarding. We touched on this earlier. Always focus on the standards and evaluate housekeeping only if the decent, safe, and sanitary conditions are affected. Is it a sanitary issue, or is it just not great housekeeping? Can it be cleaned up in an hour or two? And that is your guideline. If it can't be cleaned up in an hour or two, then you write it up as a tenant fail. But if it's something that can be cleaned up in an hour or two, you can't fail them. You can comment, but you can't fail them. Housekeeping issues can be addressed one of 5 ways. Are they trip hazards, fire hazards, health and safety hazards, infestation, or garbage and debris? Those are ways you can those are the 5 ways to mark it as a housekeeping issue. You cannot fail, and we'll get into this later. You can't fail the tenant because there's roaches because of their housekeeping. You can fail them for the unsanitary conditions that have led to it, if it's something that can be cleaned up in an hour or two. Common areas and halls. Common areas, courtyards, parking lots, stairways, hallways are all subject to the HQS inspection as well. So the door into the building that has the broken glass, the security door into the building that isn't working properly, it isn't locking. You go down the hall and there's missing vent covers or huge sections of drywall missing or broken windows. Those are all fail items. Elevators. Elevators need to be inspected, and they should have a copy of the current elevator inspection on file in their office. And there is more about elevators. I just sent it into the I believe I did. Yep, just sent it into the chat. That website, so you can just copy it. All right, indoor air quality. This would be sewage smells, fumes, and debris and odors from the ductwork. Something that is rotting in a wall, etc. Issues that affect the quality of the air inside the home. If there's ever a question about an existing poor air quality condition, it could, whether or not it should be considered dangerous, check with your local health department. Air quality, I have had issues where they have not cleaned the forced air heat, and a whole lot of debris is just blowing out. That has been a fail. Other similar issues. So if there was a fine, like small particle dust all over everything, every time it blew, you could see it coming out of the vent every time the furnace kicked on. Site and neighborhood conditions. So things that would be a fail would be items that seriously and continuously endanger the health or safety of the residents. Things like, even if there is a house 2 doors down that has stacked mattresses and trash and items that can, attract vermin, things like that, that can be a fail. Other buildings nearby property that pose a hazard. This building is about to fall down. That's a hazard and needs to be addressed, and the landlord can address it with the owners of that home. Evidence of flooding or major drainage problems. Mudslides or large land settlements or collapse, sinkholes. Proximity to open sewage, septic leaks, abnormal air pollution, which continuously throughout the year is determined to be seriously endanger health. Also fire hazards, unprotected heights, cliffs. So if the apartment or house is set on a cliff and there is not a fence on that cliff, then that is a fail. So we're going to get into carbon monoxide detectors and smoke detectors. Carbon monoxide, it was signed into law in July of 2009 that if there is a fireplace, an attached garage or a fireplace attached garage or any appliance inside the building that uses gas or propane, there needs to be a carbon monoxide detector within 15 feet of any room used for sleeping and one on each level of the home. Landlords are required to replace the carbon monoxide detector if it was stolen or found missing or removed. It's inoperable, and before the new tenant moves in, it has to be there. They need to ensure that the necessary batteries were provided to the new tenant at the beginning of their tenancy. Replace any carbon monoxide alarm that has been stolen, removed, missing, found inoperable during the tenant's occupancy, so long as the tenant notifies the owner and the owner's authorized agent in writing. And they need to fix the deficiency in a carbon monoxide alarm, so long as the tenant notifies the owner. So the tenant needs to be doing the testing while they are living there. And when you do the inspection, you need to test for a carbon monoxide detector. The tenant is required to keep, test, and maintain all of the smoke alarms and carbon monoxide alarms in good repair, notify the owner if there's a problem, everything we just went over, and notify the owner if there's any problems with the battery or if it's stolen, removed, missing, not working, it needs to be there. So no person shall remove the batteries or render inoperable a carbon monoxide alarm except as part of an inspection, maintenance, or repair or replacement process. It's the law. This law requires them to have them within 15 feet of the bedroom, just like I told you, in any building that has a fuel-fired heater or appliance. Now this means the fuel includes coal, kerosene, oil, gas, propane, wood, any kind of fuel. This means that if there is a boiler in the bottom of the apartment complex basement and it is in the same building as the unit, then they do have to have a carbon monoxide detector in the unit. This would include buildings with boilers that supply hot water to the unit, just like I said. If there's a gas appliance anywhere in the unit, anywhere in the building, there needs to be a detector. I'm like going on and on and on about this. I actually was hospitalized for carbon monoxide poisoning. It was a horrible experience. I spent the night in the hyperbaric chamber. They tell you that it's an easy way to go. It is not. It's very painful. And I was very lucky. So I really, carbon monoxide detectors save lives. They really do. You don't want to place a carbon monoxide detector close to any fuel burning appliance in a bathroom or someplace else that's excessively humid, or in direct sunlight, near sources of blowing air like a ceiling fan or a vent or an open window. It prevents them from working properly. And like I said, it's a dangerous thing, so it's really important that they're there. There must be one on every level of the home within 15 feet of the entrance to any bedroom or room used for sleeping. This is both for smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors. Smoke detectors, in order to work properly, need to be at least 4 inches from a corner in order to work properly, because when smoke comes up, it goes up the wall, and then just before the corner, it will curve and go to the ceiling. And that entire 4-inch either direction is dead airspace. And if the smoke detector is there, it's not going to ever know that there's smoke. and they should use the placement guidelines. Follow the placement guidelines, and carbon and combination units are acceptable. They're going to make 2 different tones, and they need to make both tones. Okay, the first tone is a beep, 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 and then the second tone is a quicker beep, 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 beep. And it usually on those dual units, it's 2 times with the first with the smoke, and then 2 times with the carbon monoxide. But you need to hear both tones. If it only gives you one tone, if it only gives you the smoke tone, it's not a dual unit. And if it only gives you, I mean, it may, if it says it's a combo unit, then one of the detectors is not working properly. So, and here's another tip. When testing a detector in any kind of assisted living housing situation or in a private home that you've noticed has some kind of security system on it, check with the management or the tenant to make sure that testing the detector is not going to set off alarms, automatically calling the fire department. I did this during a move-in inspection, and the person the landlord had sent with me to do the inspection did not know the code to tell the fire department when they called. So I had to explain to the fireman why the alarm went off. It's stressful and embarrassing. So you really want to make sure before you push that button, it's not connected to a security system of some kind. And in a lot of nursing homes, if you push that button, it's going to set up all of them. So that is the basics. We're going to get into now lead-based paint. And we are going to go through it fairly quickly. Let me take a look at the time. We have about 10 minutes. And then we'll get into all the questions. So we're going to talk about lead-based paint and the dangers that it can pose. This goes in quite a bit in depth. So most of the information in this presentation is from us at the Department of Local Affairs, at HUD, and the EPA, Center for Disease Control, and World Health Organization. And I thank them for all of the information I was able to find. This does not exempt anyone from taking the HUD visualization assessment training and test. It's intended to clarify any questions that you may have. We will go through this until the 20 till mark and then pick it back up when we come back tomorrow. As inspectors, you will check all painted surfaces as any part of the inspection, looking for cracked, chipped, and deteriorated surfaces. We will comment or fail deteriorated paint, regardless of the age of the building or its occupants. If there is a child under the age of 6 that resides in the home, or there's the potential for a child under the age of 6 in the home during the term of the lease, either through custody, adoption, or pregnancy, and the home was built before 1978, there's a different set of rules that apply. If the paint's deteriorated and the criteria for the LBP, lead-based paint rule, does not apply, you mark your inspection form in the area that the deteriorated paint was found. For instance, you'd go, it was the kitchen window, deteriorated paint on the frame. This is a 1980s home with a window frame that has deteriorated paint. If the paint's deteriorated and the criteria is met, you mark your inspection form in the lead-based paint section under that particular room in the home. It's 1977 home, deteriorated paint with a pregnant tenant. And it's 340. If it comes to if it is a case where you are actually marking the lead-based paint section of the form, then clearance is required, and we will get into this tomorrow and explain that more thoroughly. So I'm going to go back up. And open up for the questions.
So Mickey, I've been trying to answer the questions as they come in, but there are some that I could not answer. So I wrote those down. Do you want me just to read them to you?
Would you?
Sure. And I tried to kind of group them together so they would make sense. The first question is, will we be able to share the slides?
Yes.
At the end of this training? I said there's more than 600, but I would ask.
Yeah, I will do that. No problem.
Well, now to get into the inspection questions. The first one, is a two-pronged ungrounded outlet acceptable?
Yes.
All right.
Yes, it is. If it's a two-pronged outlet, it's ungrounded.
So it's fine. It's fine to have the, gotcha. What if an outdoor faucet doesn't have a you were talking about acceptable temperature of faucets in the beginning.
Oh, outdoor faucets can be just cold water.
So they don't have to warm up?
No, they don't have to be.
Great.
Sorry about that. Good point. Good point.
Okay, if an HQS inspector reports that there's a mold-like substance during the inspection, what remedy does the owner need to take, and is this a fail?
Yes.
It is a fail.
It is a fail, and the owner needs to address it. They need to have it cleaned up and mitigated. So they need to clean and paint over, or pull out all that nasty deteriorating caulk and recaulk, or they need to address it.
Now, are they required to test if it's a black mold concern?
No, we don't have any regulation on that.
That is how I answered another question. So I was just double checking my answer there. Thank you. Okay, can there be any cracked tiles? And if there are cracked tiles, is it a fail?
There can be cracked tiles, but if they're on flooring in traffic areas, or on an area where somebody might be walking with bare feet, like in the bathroom, they need to be fixed. They need to be replaced. Okay. because they're a cutting issue.
Okay. And I'm going to answer all these questions and then save the Q&A. So I'm just sort of writing down too.
Okay.
Okay, this is a good one. During the cold season, if the windows are weatherized or covered in plastic, how can the inspector test if the window locks and just the overall window quality?
You're really supposed to, move that plastic and have them replace it, or put it back together. You're supposed to test the window.
Got it. I guess the tip would be, but in the cold season inspections, maybe include that in your letter, that all windows need to be accessible. Okay, so to confirm, exterior doors must be solid wood or metal. They cannot be interior doors or hollow core if they are used on exterior entrances. Okay.
Correct.
Okay, what type of thermometer would you recommend for testing the fridge or freezer temperatures?
You know what? We're going to get into those.
Right.
We will get into those tomorrow, actually. We'll go over tools and some tips on that.
Cool. This is a popular question regarding the proper size of a refrigerator. So a couple things. In an SRO, having a small fridge with a freezer, would that be acceptable? But really the question was, there's a studio apartments in a building and the landlord has only provided the dorm-sized fridges.
Well, it would depend. Is it the little bitty dorm fridge or is it the refrigerator freezer if it's an SRO? If it's one of those, small little refrigerator freezers I'm sorry, did I miss?
What's that?
I thought maybe I missed something. I'm sorry.
Oh, no. Just a couple questions about the size of the refrigerator. I tried to look in the regs and I couldn't find it enough.
It needs to be adequate. I mean, if it's in a place where their meals are being provided, then it just needs to be a small little refrigerator. Maybe a refrigerator freezer is actually what it should be, but a tiny one is just fine. One of those that sits under the counter is just fine.
Mhm.
But if their meals are not provided, then it needs to be something that's adequate for the size of the family occupying that unit. I mean, you can't have a small little refrigerator and you've got 10 people living in the home.
Okay, so I answered this, but I just want to make sure I said it right, and maybe I didn't. The question was, how long are space heaters allowed to be affixed? And I said, well, it would be a 24-hour fail if the temperature was below 65. So 24 hours is how long a space heater could.
That would be right.
Yeah, I still got it.
Yeah.
Okay, do units have to have their own thermal environment controls? For example, there is a house that was recently converted to a fourplex, but the heat is controlled by one unit for all units. Is that allowed?
No, they need to be able to control their own heat.
Okay.
That's not fair.
I agree, especially as someone who likes it really hot in the house.
Mhm.
I'm fighting with my roommates, AKA my family. Okay, this is about gutters and roofs. Couple questions or question and a comment. How would we know if the gutter is not working properly besides the visible buckling or it's broken? There are many instances where we can't view the roof or the gutters.
Right. If you see a lot of leaves and pine needles and such hanging out of the gutter, it needs to be cleaned. The tenant may complain about the gutter not working properly.
Mhm.
Or you may see, water streaks going down the walls in places where the gutter should have caught the water. You can see if it's like bypassing the gutter and just going on behind it down the wall, you're going to see water staining.
Okay, and then one more question I wrote down, and then there's some new questions. Is certification from a recent fire inspection acceptable for the building inspection?
No, you have to do an HQS inspection and you have to test the smoke alarms. Now, if it is like in the case of a nursing home, or if it is like in the case of a nursing home where they came in and did the fire alarm testing in all of the units, that would pass for the fire alarm, the smoke alarm, carbon monoxide alarm part of the inspection.
So I just did an inspection last week in a senior living apartment complex where they had all the units were wired, so I couldn't test
Right.
the detector. So I just said pass. Was that right?
Yeah, well,
that looks good to me.
You should check with the office and find out when their last fire inspection was.
Got it. So I think that probably goes along the lines of this.
In a place like that, you're going to run into a fire extinguishers probably in the unit. And you're going to want to check those also to be up to date.
Got it. I will check back in with that landlord because I didn't do that. Okay, so we've got some new questions coming in Q&A. I don't know if you can see them, if you want to tackle those.
I think I do. If a basement unit entry is in a garage and through the entry splits into two, one for the upper level and one for the lower, when entering, there is a door to the upper and stairs to the, I assume, the lower. Will this pass? If at the bottom of the stairs, there is a door into the unit, yes. That way, neither family is going in, crossing into the other's living space. If there's no door at the bottom, a separate door into that bottom unit or upper unit to lock it off from the rest, then they are no longer private. That is a common, that's part of their living space. Did that make sense?
It does to me.
Okay. And I apologize if this was already answered, but on the apartment complexes where the smoke alarm runs through all the units, you can't push the button to test whether it works or not without tripping the entire system. How do you assess whether it's a fail or a pass? I think we just discussed that. You can talk with the management and find out, see if you can get a hold of their last fire inspection. And that way you know that all of the units have been tested. Now that is for in an apartment building, you're going to find that there is like a speaker on the wall somewhere usually, and that is the entire building's fire system. But the unit will have separate, in most places, unless it's like a senior living home or a nursing home of some kind, the unit itself will have separate CO and fire detectors. And those are the ones that we need to test. If they are all hardwired in, like we discussed, check with the management to find out when the last fire inspection was. When does the 365-day mark start? When it was completed or when it passes inspection? It's going to be when it passed inspection, because that will be the last mark that you put into the system as the last inspection they had when you do the reinspection to pass it. Is that right, Catherine?
Sorry, I was typing an answer to another question. Can you,
Yeah.
when does the 365-day mark start?
Mm-hmm.
It's when the HQS passes. It has to be between the pass date, correct?
Correct, that's what I said, yeah.
Okay, sorry, multitasking at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Not a thing I do great.
If there are live bees inside or outside water heater closet on a balcony in the townhouse, is it a fail? Yes. Yes, that you could put that down as under infestation, because it's a danger. And then I think there are mini with a freezer. I think they are mini with a freezer. Shay, I think you're talking about the conversation we had earlier. Crystal, is there an update to a good place to live brochure that we can put on our website for interested landlords for them to review for their units? Or do you have any suggestions or informative material for us to advertise to our landlords? Catherine?
I believe we have the most up-to-date A Good Place to Live in our briefing packet. So if HUD has updated that in the last couple of years, I would have to check. But we have, it's part of our larger voucher briefing packet that we have on our website, but I think you could just Google A Good Place to Live because HUD has it as a separate. Oh, I'm saying this out loud. I remember looking at it recently and thinking it was ridiculous. And I think we had to update it. Let me get back to you, Crystal. I'm going to have to go back into my pre-pandemic brain and see if I can find where we updated that. I'll make myself a note.
Also, Crystal, you can tell your landlords, and we'll be coming out with it with the advertising later in the month, we're going to be doing a what to expect from an inspection training for landlords in December. So I think it's December 15th. So we should have that information out to you sometime in the next couple of weeks. All right, I think, whoops, wait a minute, there's more. Can there be a carbon monoxide detectors that plug into the outlets? Yes, there can. Those are generally meant to be down lower. New carbon monoxide detectors are so sensitive. Another question I get a lot is, you know, carbon monoxide's a gas, it's lower, so why are the detectors on the ceiling? The new detectors are so, I mean, they can detect such a minute particle that they work just fine on the ceiling. But yes, carbon monoxide detectors that plug into the outlets are just fine if they work. And I'm new to inspecting. My understanding of inspecting heaters and boilers for an apartment building is to ask the complex manager to look at the source of heat, correct? Yes. Or are we expected to test the thermostat of the unit to ensure the heater is working properly? Yes, both. Yes, you want to turn on that thermostat and make sure that those fins are actually heating up or the radiator is actually getting warm, that you've got, that it clicks on to a forced air heat and the air actually comes out. You want to make sure that the room actually gets the heat, because just because the boiler's working doesn't mean the valve that turns on, that opens up when that thermostat calls for heat, is working. So you do want to check and make sure that the heat is working in the unit. What would be the time limit from the last fire inspector for all of the building alarms? Fire alarms, I don't remember if it's every 6 months or every year, but I know it's at least once a year. I think it's once a year. The heater remedy rule for time limits, 24 hours, because if there is no heat, if it's between October and May, if the heat is not working, they've got 24 hours to fix it. Should the unit have separate smoke detectors if the unit has an internal system? Hang on just a second here. I am so sorry. Can't find my mute button. Okay. If the unit has an internal system, it doesn't need to have a separate smoke alarm. If there's a smoke detector inside the unit, that's fine. The apartment complex should have smoke alarms in the hallways, though, and in the stairwells. Does that answer the question right for you? If there is a fail due to the tenant's doing and it continues to go unresolved, is there a HAP payment hold? No. Catherine, do you want to address that?
Sure. We do not abate HAP if it's a tenant caused fail. We can only abate HAP if it's a landlord caused fail. If it is a tenant caused fail that doesn't get resolved, we have to then turn to our tenant conference process to try and help resolve why that unit continues to be in fail status. Did we answer the question about the reinspection of a unit after it fails? I'm going to answer it in case we haven't, but I was typing, so I wasn't paying attention. So when we do a reinspection of a unit after it fails, do we need to complete a whole new form, or do we just state the first form with the date when the failed items pass? You don't have to do a new form. The form is just a tool for when you're doing the inspection because you're going to process that in Elite. And when you do a failed inspection in Elite, it automatically creates the re-inspection, just waiting for you to come in, put those dates in and mention that it passes. So I guess that would be your preference if you feel comfortable bringing a whole new form out, or you could just bring your original form. And I like to bring the old red pen to say that here I am again, and I'm going to check the things that failed, and now I'm going to pass the things that failed with my fancy red pen. Let's see. Ooh, here's a question, Mickey. Do they have to email the secret word to you daily or final training?
If you're here, you don't have to email the secret word. We are going to really quick, like, copy everybody's name down that came.
I've already done it, Mickey.
Oh, you're wonderful. So if you're here, you don't have to send me the secret word, okay? If you are not here and you want to get that participation certificate and you're watching this on video, then email me. After you've watched the video, email me the secret word and I will check it with the other day's worth of video, the other 3 days, the 3 days worth of classes, figure out which one you missed. If that's the right secret word, then you got it and I'll send it to you. Did that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, so great. So everyone, we'll see you same time, same place tomorrow, 2 o'clock for day number 2. I'm going to keep this open so I can keep answering questions and then I can save the Q&A from today, but I am going to mute it and I'm going to stop recording.
Okay.
Any other final words for the day, Mickey?
Dinah, you asked when the recordings will be posted. We will get those out as soon as possible, I'm sure, right, Catherine?
Yeah, so I should get the link as soon as this is over. Zoom usually emails me the link within an hour. And I don't know how we do that though. I think we have to get it on the website. I can try and email it. We can test out some things so people can get access to the recording, or we may have to wait until we can get it up on the web. I'll test that out.
Well, awesome. That's it. Tomorrow we'll finish up with lead-based paint and start working on the forms and what's required. And we will see y'all tomorrow.
Thanks, Mickey.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.